Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with a little bit something different. Today we're going to be starting a brand new series, so there will be an extra long introduction here. This series that I am doing, I'm going to call Exploring Ideologies. It is going through piece by piece and talking about the parts of, right? So we are starting with one that is absolutely going to bring some pushback. This is going to be the Manifesto of the Communist Party by Karl Marx. We will be reading through and discussing as we go along. But before we begin, because you probably do not know me or any of my unconventional beliefs, I'm going to tell you a few things right up front. First off, I in no way, shape, or form endorse communism as a system of government ever, anywheres, for any reason. For reasons that will be apparent if you watch the rest of this video and the series. So don't start commenting yet. With that being said, I also want to make it very clear that communism in and of itself is not a terrible idea. It is impossible to execute. Therefore, I hold it in exactly the same esteem that I hold socialism and anarcho-capitalism. They are all equally unattainable. They are just as bad, if not worse, than democracy or mob rule. And therefore, I do not endorse them as an idea for a system of government. However, the ideals held in some cases are things that we should absolutely adopt within ourselves. And if that pissed you off, stick around. There will be more. We will talk in detail as we go through, and he brings up the subject on why they are either good or bad. And if you agree or disagree, you are free to leave the comments down below, and we can have a discussion in reasonable terms. If you keep it civil, it gets to stay up, even if I don't agree with it. No name calling, no random mess like that. I have been looking for a way to get more involved in the political situation, and I believe that the best way to do that is the way that I do everything else that we have in all of these playlists. Is to talk about them in very real terms on a very earthly level, right? We're going to start this like we do most of the rest of them. We're going to talk about the background. We're going to talk about where they came from very briefly, because that's not really the important part. The ideas are the important part, but it is good to have the framework. We're going to talk about Marx's background. We're going to talk about Engels' background very briefly, and then we're going to read the prologue. That's probably going to be all we do today in this video, but I want to lay the groundwork. That's what I do. We go and we talk about some esoteric things. I got a whole playlist on the woo-woo stuff. I believe in some woo-woo stuff. I hold unconventional beliefs in the Bible. I have an unconventional Bible study where I hold some severely unconventional beliefs, and we go through step by step on how I achieved it. You get to watch it in real time. We read it and we discuss it. We talk about what is it meaning and what is the practical application, and can there be a practical application? The problem with communism, socialism, and anarcho-capitalism is that they cannot be implemented. There is no perfect people anywhere on the planet, and so you cannot implement a perfect system. In theory, communism is the perfect system. Everybody gets what they need. It will never work that way. So, with that being said, let's start talking about the people. Now, the intro to this, the prologue, is by Mr. Frederick Engels here. Karl Marx wrote it. Frederick Engels helped him with the theory and stuff. He compiled some of this stuff after his death, but I'm not sure that was for this or for the other. Regardless, the preface is by him, so we're going to talk about him real quick. He was the son of a capitalist, right? A very, very wealthy textile capitalist. He was so independently wealthy that he was able to fund Karl Marx through most of his life. They met, where does it say they met? He was a businessman, Marx's closest friend, the wealthy textile manufacturer. He helped with these books. We don't have to get into the notable details of it, but he was the authority on Marx and on communism. He was the guy that everybody referred to after Marx died. Uh, it's easier to talk about things than it is to actually put them into place, right? So he was very wealthy. He had the capability to do things. That was through family wealth or whatever. It is notable that the people involved and in the execution of communism never seem to lose their status in the practical application part, right? When people start dying, it's not the people at the top of the tree. And so we have the view back through history on why these things are not good. It's important to keep in mind the time frame of when this happened. Now, the Communist Manifesto itself was first published in London in 1848. There were several thinkers that came together to produce the manifesto in total and in collaboration in London. They published it in a variety of language, of which English was one. But it was 1848. 1848 was 13 years before the American Civil War began. There was still slavery very much on this continent and several others. There was very much the beginnings of the fall of the royalty classes. And so it is not unusual to see these new types of ideologies percolating, right? There was definitely a lot of contention here in the States between the slave class and the labor class and the upper wealthy class and the governing class. And so it's not inconceivable that they would come together with this. This historical context is important because they don't have the view of freed people after the Civil War, despite the fact that it did take a very long time to get to the point where we are now. Right? We'll leave it framed in that manner. It was a journey that had not yet even really begun. There were abolitionists, there were free enslaved states, but the division, the deaths, the blood that was paid, that hadn't happened yet. So this was written with the ignorance of slavery being eradicated. Eradicated is a big word. There is still currently slavery today, open air, on the block, by people. That happens. Not here. That's under the shades, behind the curtains, in the apartments here. But there are places where you can literally go and buy a human being today. So it's not eradicated. But it was made illegal at best here, right? But that was still almost 15 years away before slavery was eradicated here. I mean, the war was fought in part over slavery, but in large not, and you can call me whatever you want for that. Slavery was a bad thing. It was already on the way out. But we paid the price in blood for that, and I'm perfectly fine with the way that history shook out. Friedrich Engels was the friend of Karl Marx, who is the principal that we are in discussion of. He was born in 1818. It does not specify the caste that he was in, the class system that he was in, but he was able to become a doctor in philosophy, which is not something that would readily be available to the lower classes. So we're talking about somebody, again, who is living probably towards the upper crust, if not in the upper crust of society. He was supported most of his life through someone else, Friedrich Engels, and so he was not really responsible for production of anything other than some thoughts. Now, we can argue the validity of the thoughts, and we will, absolutely, be arguing the validity of the thoughts. But that's really all he produced. He produced some books on things, but they were things not like that you can do anything with. They were things that were philosophical in nature. He got a doctorate in philosophy. And while it's a good endeavor, like, you should definitely know philosophy. I have a whole playlist where we are exploring some philosophy. But it shouldn't be your job. right? That should be part-time or for disabled people, right? People who cannot be productively employed in other places. And that's not to put you into a job, but you're probably better employed somewhere else, especially if you're coming up with this. And now we can really begin to start stepping on some toes. So as we have talked about the principles, right? The guy who did the preface, which we will be reading today, and the guy who the whole thing really centers around. It's so much about him that it is called Marxism. And so, let's get into the text. This is the preface. The Manifesto was published as the platform of the Communist League, a working men's association, first exclusively German, later on international, and under the political conditions of the continent before 1848, unavoidably a secret society. At a congress of the League held in London in November 1847, Marx and Engels were commissioned to prepare for publication a complete theoretical and practical party program. Drawn up in German in January 1848, the manuscript was sent to the printer in London a few weeks before the French Revolution of February 24th. A French translation was brought out in Paris shortly before the insurrection of June 1848. The first English translation, by Miss Helen Macfarlane, appeared in George Julian Harney's Red Republican, London, 1850. A Danish and a Polish edition had also been published. The defeat of the Parisian insurrection of June 1848, the first great battle between proletariat and bourgeoisie, drove again into the background, for a time, the social and political aspirations of the European working class. Thenceforth, the struggle for supremacy was again, as it had been before the Revolution of February, solely between the different sections of the propertied class. The working class was reduced to a fight for political elbow room and to the position of extreme wing of the middle class radicals. Wherever independent proletarian movements continued to show signs of life, they were ruthlessly hunted down. Thus, the Prussian police hunted out the Central Board of the Communist League, then located in Cologne. The members were arrested, and after 18 months' imprisonment, they were tried in October of 1852. This celebrated Cologne Communist trial lasted from October the 4th till November the 12th. 7 of the prisoners were sentenced to terms of imprisonment in a fortress, varying from 3 to 6 years. Immediately after the Senate of the League was formally dissolved by the remaining members. Immediately after the Senate, the League was formally dissolved by the remaining members. Sorry, I had the wrong emphasis there. As to the Manifesto, it seemed, thenceforth, to be doomed to oblivion. When the European working class had recovered sufficient strength for another attack on the ruling classes, the International Working Men's Association sprang up. But this association, formed with the express aim of welding into one body the whole military proletariat of Europe and America, could not at once proclaim the principles laid down in the Manifesto. The International was bound to have a program board broad enough to be acceptable to the English trades unions, to the followers of Proudhon in France, Belgium, Italy, and Spain, and to the Lassallians in Germany. There's a footnote here. We will look at it real quick. Footnote A is, Lassalle, personally, to us, always acknowledged himself to be a disciple of Marx and, as such, stood on the ground of the Manifesto. But, in his public agitation, 1862-64, he did not go beyond demanding cooperative workshops, supported by state credit, and therefore was not a true communist. Marx, who drew up this program to the satisfaction of all parties, entirely trusted to the intellectual development of the working class, which was sure to result from the combined action and mutual discussion. The very events and vicissitudes of the struggle against capital, the defeats even more than the victories, could not help bringing home to men's minds the insufficiency of their various favorite nostrums, and preparing the way for a more complete insight into the true conditions of working class emancipation. And Marx was right. The International, on its breaking up in 1874, left the workers quite different from what it had been. The International, on its breaking up in 1874, left the workers quite different men from what it had been found them in 1864. Proudhonism in France, Lassalleanism in Germany were dying out, and even the conservative English trades unions, though most of them had long since severed the connection with the International, were gradually advancing towards the point at which, last year at Swansea, their president could say in their name, "Continental socialism has lost its terrors for us." In fact, the principles of the Manifesto had made considerable headway among the working men of all countries. The Manifesto itself, thus, came from the front again. The German text had been, since 1850, reprinted several times in Switzerland, England, and America. In 1872 it was translated into English in New York, where the translation was published in Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly. Okay, so I was wrong about that earlier. From this English version, a French one was made in Le Socialiste of New York. Since then, at least two more English translations, more or less mutilated, have been brought out in America, and one of them has been reprinted in England. The first Russian translation, made by Bakunin, was published at Herzens Kolokol office in Geneva about 1863. A second one by the heroic Vera Zasulich, also in Geneva, 1882. A new Danish edition is to be found in Socialdemokratisk Bibliothek, Copenhagen, 1885. A fresh French translation in Le Socialiste, Paris, 1886. From this latter, a Spanish version was prepared and published in Madrid, 1886. The German reprints are not to be counted. There have been 12 altogether at the least. An Armenian translation, which was to be published in Constantinople some months ago, did not see the light, I am told, because the publisher was afraid of bringing out a book with the name of Marx on it, while the translator declined to call it his own production. Of further translations into other languages I have heard, but have not seen them. Thus, the history of the Manifesto reflects, to a great extent, the history of the modern working class movement. At present, it is undoubtedly the most widespread, the most international production of all socialist literature. The common platform acknowledged by millions of working men from Siberia to California. Yet, when it was written, we could not have called it a socialist manifesto. By socialist in 1847 were understood, on the one hand, the adherents of the various utopian systems. Owenites in England, Fourierists in France, both of them already reduced to the position of mere sects, and gradually dying out. On the other hand, the most multifarious social quacks, who, by all manners of tinkering, profess to redress, without any danger to capital and profit, all sorts of social grievances. In both cases, men working outside the working class movement and looking rather to the educated classes for support. Whatever portion of the working classes had become convinced of the insufficiency of mere political revolutions, and had proclaimed the necessity of a total social change, that portion, then, called itself communist. It was a crude, rough-hewn, purely instinctive sort of communism. Still, it touched the cardinal point, and that was powerful enough among the working class to produce the utopian communism. In France of Courbet, and in Germany of Weitling. Thus, socialism was, in 1847, a middle-class movement, and communism a working-class movement. Socialism was, on the continent at least, respectable. Communism was the very opposite. And as our notion from the very beginning was that the emancipation of the working class must be the act of the working class itself, there could be no doubt as to which of the two names we must take. Moreover, we have ever since been far from repudiating it, says a man who did not work. The Manifesto being our joint production, I consider myself bound to state that the fundamental proposition which forms its nucleus belongs to Marx. That proposition is that in every historical epoch, the prevailing mode of economic production and exchange, and the social organization necessarily following from it, form the basis upon which is built up, and from which alone can be explained, the political and intellectual history of that epoch. That, consequently, the whole history of mankind, since the dissolution of primitive tribal society holding land in common ownership, has been a history of class struggles, contests between exploiting and exploited, ruling and oppressed classes. That the history of these class struggles forms a series of evolution in which, nowadays, a stage has been reached where the exploited and the oppressed class, the proletariat, cannot attain its emancipation from the sway of the exploiting and ruling class, the bourgeoisie, without, at the same time and once for all, emancipating society at large from all exploitation, oppression, class distinction, and class struggles. And see, it's this word here that really throws a link in everything. Like, it is not impossible to remove all exploitation. It's never going to be possible. Somebody has to do the scud work. It's always going to be somebody who is picked on, right? It's always going to be the less informed, the less intelligent even, those who don't think as well, those who work really hard but don't really have the grindage power. They're always going to be exploited. Now, the goal should be to not, right? I believe in ethical capitalism. I believe in communalism, which is everybody working together for the betterment of all of us. That's where I am, right? I am starting really small. I'm still getting my house in order, but I am actively working towards expanding that towards other people, to give away the products of my labor, not anyone else's. That is my goal. There will always be exploitation, oppression, class distinctions, and class struggles. It doesn't matter if you were to try to eliminate money, which is not possible, you would still find something to bicker about. There would still be divisions, there would still be distinctions, and there would still be class struggles. It is not economic at that point, but there's going to be somebody that doesn't want to work and somebody that wants to work really hard, right? And the person that's working really hard is going to look at the other person like they're a piece of shit. And that is true, right? If you're not working at anything, then you are a piece of shit. And so that is a distinction. And that is a class distinction. You have a worker and a non-worker. And even in Marxism, that's a distinction that you make, right? That's a class distinction. But it's not economic. It's not tied to economy. It is simply, I am working harder than you. You don't get to eat my food. There's no money involved, but there's food involved. I built this. I made this. I hunted this. I've gardened this. I harvested this. I prepared this. This is my shit. It's not yours. That is never going to go away. And anybody thinking that it will is living in an idealistic world. That's not possible. Idealism doesn't work. This proposition, which, in my opinion, is destined to do for history what Darwin's theory has done for biology, we, both of us, have been gradually approaching for some years before 1845. How far I had independently progressed towards it is best shown by my condition of the working class in England. We got a footnote there. Let's go ahead and pop it out. The Condition of the Working Class in England in 1844 by Frederick Engels, translated by Florence. There's no need for that to even be a footnote. But again, when I again met Marx at Brussels in the spring of 1845, he had it ready, worked out, and put it before me in terms almost as clear as those in which I have stated it here. From our joint preface in the German edition of 1872, I quote the following. However much the state of things may have altered during the last 25 years, the general principles laid down in this manifesto are, on the whole, as correct today as ever. Here and there some detail might be improved. The practical application of the principles will depend, as the manifesto itself states, everywhere and at all times, on the historical conditions for the time being existing. And for that reason no special stress is laid on the revolutionary measures proposed at the end of Section 2. That passage would, in many respects, be very differently worded today, in view of the gigantic strides of modern industry since 1848, and one of the accompanying improved and extended organization of the working class, in view of the practical experience gained. First, in the February Revolution, and then, still more, in the Paris Commune, where the proletariat for the first time held political power for 2 whole months. This program has in some details become antiquated. One thing especially was proven by the Commune, viz. That the working class cannot simply lay hold of the ready-made state machinery and wield it for its own purposes. See the Civil War in France. Address of the General Council of the International Working Men's Association, London, Truelove, 1871, page 15, where this point is further developed. That could have been a footnote. Further, it is self-evident that the criticism of socialist literature is deficient in relation to the present time because it comes down only to 1847. Also, that the remarks on the relation of the communists to the various opposition parties, Section 4, although in principle still correct, yet in practice are antiquated, because the political situation has been entirely changed, and the progress of history has swept off of the earth a greater portion of the political parties there enumerated. But then, the manifesto has become a historical document which we no longer have any right to alter. The present translation is by Mr. Samuel Moore, the translator of the greater portion of Marx's Capital. We have revised it, and I have added a few notes explanatory of historical allusions. Frederick Ingalls, London, January 30th, 1888. Okay, so that is going to wrap up today, which is probably going to wind up being a short one, but that's okay. This one was just groundwork. I've laid myself out as clear and as plain as can be, right? I do not believe that it is possible to execute communism, pure capitalism either, but that's a whole different argument. I believe in responsible capitalism. I believe that that is a possibility. I believe that the people in charge can make the correct decisions, and that is what's going to lead us up. But we have to demand that from the people, right? We have to demand that from our employers. We have to demand that from whoever. We have to be that, though. You cannot go to work and expect more pay if you're on Facebook, if you're scrolling through YouTube or listening to me and not being productive, then you cannot expect to get more, right? That's just not how that works. If you want more, you have to do more. That is the physicality of how the returns work. If you don't want to be the non-working guy, then you need to be the working guy. You need to pick up the responsibility. Here, we talk about it often, and I'm going to talk about it here in the wrap-up. My goal here is to make enough money to fund a game, right? I have 2 games ready to go, but I am not technically savvy enough to execute them myself. And so, this is a grind so that I can find the crew that wants to build it, number 1, with the proper morals and ethics and all of those things, and so that I can invest my money into the game, right? The money that I am making from this is to go into the game. I have an LLC that the game is under. I have my own video game production company that I am doing that, and I am working in the game, not as diligent as I could be, but I am, so that I am ready when I find the people or I get the funds for myself to do this. I want to be able to pay people to do this. That's the goal, right? But I want to take the profits from that and invest it in another project. My ultimate goal in all of it is to invest all of the profits from the various things into a school. I want to go and invest in a school where we can get people who are homeless and people who are getting out of prison and want to change their life and people who are addicted and want a change and don't want to have to go through some crazy ass lock me up program. I want a voluntary service. I want a school with a bunch of one bedroom apartments, one bedroom, one bath apartments where you're responsible for yourself and we teach you how to do life. I want to fund that. That's what I want to do with my life. That is what I am investing my energy in. I want to be the example of responsible capitalism. I want to teach these people how to live life. I want to teach these people how to function in a way that we have failed them with the governmental programs. Because we have failed with the governmental programs. I am on Social Security disability. Upfront and honest with everybody about that. I am injured. I have a bunch of problems. I work through my problems. I am on a different grind because I was put on a different grind. I am a worker. I have been a part of 3 unions and all 3 of them have shit on me. I mean, I am a worker. I outwork anybody around me. As hard as I can work is what I am going to work. And so I want to invest all of my energy into this school so that I can teach people how to live life. I want to teach them how to financially plan. I want to teach them how to do their taxes, how to form an LLC, and to achieve their dreams. I want to teach them how to meditate and pray. I want to teach them how to achieve inner peace. And I personally want to fund that. I don't want to have to go to the government and say, hey, Daddy, give me some money. I want to spend my energy on that. And so that's what I personally am doing. Like I am living that. That is literally what I am doing. All of my videos are aimed toward that. We talk about it a lot. Not as often as we could because I'm not here to take your money. Like it'd be great if I had somebody that said, hey, I want to pay you to do this. I will do it. And I will still invest my money in the other things because I want to do it. I want to achieve it. And I don't even have to have my name attached. Right? It's not going to be Pitt's school. Right? It'll be named after someone else. It'll be named in honor of someone else. It will be completely off of me. Right? I want to be intimately involved in it. I want to make sure that it is doing the correct thing. I want to be involved in the hirings and the firings and making sure. I want to be the example that these people talked about. Because you can't get it done through the government. The government is inefficient. The government is corrupt. I am not. I am efficient. I am not corrupt. I can say that. I live that. I show that on a daily basis. I am here every day investing myself in other people that I will never see. I cry on the internet for people so that they know that it is okay for a man to cry. I laugh on the internet so people know that I invest in the intelligence of our people. Because people need to know that this is important. People need to know that actually reading through the document and thinking about them and discussing them is an important step in your life. That is what I invest myself in every single day. I'm having to learn how to take time off and to relax and to play video games because all I want to do is achieve. And I want to give it away. I don't want to achieve and hoard it so that my kids get money. They are going to be perfectly fine on their own. They're both doing very, very well on their own. I don't need it. So I want to make it and I want to invest in other people. I want to raise a whole generation of leadership. I want people that came from the bottom and are touching the top. That's what I want my legacy to be. And so I am investing myself in that. And this is part of it. Because the government's not going to do it. The governmental programs are not going to do it. The Department of Education has failed us. We are worse off now than we were when it was formed. We are not as intelligent as we were. And that is because of the government. We need to take control and responsibility for our lives. And you're not going to find that in someone else's manifesto. You're not going to find that listening to me, right? You can find a path listening to me, but you got to find your own way. I'm not here to make a decision for you. I'm here to tell you my opinion. I'm here to try to bring a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion. I am here to very much bring light to things that people only partially understand. I have several playlists dedicated to that. They will only let me link 5. There's a lot of them. I talk about a variety of topics. We talk about everything from magic to patriotism. We read through the entirety of the Constitution, and all of the Federalist Papers were working through Manly Hall. We talk about everything over here because everything needs to be talked about. We need to bring more light to more things. We can teach more people more things, and I am a teacher. We can help people to heal themselves, and I am a healer. I'm a counselor. I'm going to be an employer. It's coming because this is where my life is devoted to. I am living what Marx wanted, what he desired, what he was jealous of and never had the balls to enact. You're not going to get it done through the state. And this particular playlist, it's going to be a whole new one where we talk about this stuff so that we can show that it's not the state that's responsible for that. It's you. It's me. It's us. If we want this country to be great, we have to make it that way. We can't let somebody else do it. We can have a captain who will bring us in the right direction, but we have to produce. You have to not be mad that somebody else has a thing and instead want to make your own thing, to do your own thing. Man, I'm so mad Destiny's not doing anything new, and why not make a game then? Be the competition. Take it from them. And then invest your money where your mouth is. Do what you say you're going to do. That's what I'm doing. I'm stating it publicly. If I don't live this, everybody's going to know it. I am here to give away money. That is my whole goal. I want things, like I want property so I can be a steward of property. I want to invest in making a Garden of Eden, but it's not about the money. I have been without money. I was perfectly fine. I've been able to eat my whole life. It's been a wonderful thing. I am happy. And that's where we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment, not too much confusion, and possibly a little bit of levity to a series of somewhat complicated topics. If this particular one offended you, you will not like the other ones. Because when we dig into the actual things, like, it's self-evident that this doesn't work. Not on a governmental level. It is absolutely impossible to implement this on a governmental level. And the proof is in the pudding. Where's the USSR? Where is North Korea? Like, we have evidence that it doesn't work, and people are still trying to implement it. So we have to go through it and talk about it, and we will. If you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If it remains civil, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Fitz Take. Peace.